Welcome to CyberBytes, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Tony Aurigemma, CRO at Anomali.
Thanks, Steffen.
Great to have you on. How are you?
Great. Doing great. Day one of BlackHat. Here we go.
Exciting times. Yeah. I can imagine you guys have a booth.
We do.
Right? You do.
Yeah, we do. We've got a pretty good presence. We had a great turnout at RSA.
Yeah.
It was really kind of surprised us a little bit how much people are interested, and word got around. So we're excited to kind of see what the vibe's like this year.
Anything exciting down there, or have you not seen it yet yourself?
I haven't been down yet. I haven't made it down. I'm sure I have all the team coming in, prepping the booth right now. So I'm sure they're busy at work.
And what's the goals for you this week for BlackHat? Any in mind?
I think it's a carry on from RSA. I think in a lot of ways, RSA ended up being a coming out party. We've been developing the kind of our platform and where we are with that. But getting awareness out, and I think, word was kind of catching on, and we saw over kind of the 2 days at BlackHat, a lot of people kind of coming in rooms. So we're really interested to see. We'll probably see some people come back again.
Nice.
And poke in and see what we're up to.
Cool. Well, the way I like to start the podcast is just give the audience a quick rewind into your background and history. So I know you're fairly newish to Anomali, but what was the history before that?
Yeah, so you're into Anomali, but it's been in security since the early 2000s.
Nice.
Started out actually in the identity space, very early days before we think about some of the great things that identity security can do today. Back then, it was exciting if you just talked about things like single sign-on. That was a novel thing back in the day. And progressed from there. Started out in consulting and services side, did a lot of work there, and I was fortunate enough, I got acquired into IBM in 2004.
Cool.
And we were accumulating a lot of software pieces, security software pieces, kind of all over the map in IBM in different pieces. And if you think about how security was kind of looked at back in the day, it was very tied to the applications. So if you think about database security, even identity security, application security, scanning code and things like that, it wasn't very consolidated. And so you had a lot of duplication and gaps that were going on. And so I was part of an organization called Tivoli. Cool. Tivoli was the home of a number of those different pieces of security. Fast forward about 2009, 2010, the group of us that were there at the time, and people leading the team said, hey, this should really come together. And the future of security is really going to start to become much more integrated. And that was the genesis of what became IBM Security. So it was at first a shadow brand under IBM Tivoli, and then in 2010, 2011, it became its own standalone organization. We did that through the acquisition of Q1 Labs, which a lot of people know as QRadar. And you think about what was going on at that point in time, SIEM was becoming the de facto standard of how you ran security operations centers and kind of the epicenter of where everything came in. So, all things in life, it's a combination of timing and luck and perseverance and, all those other things. But being there at that moment to kind of see what security is today come together was really exciting. So, I was a younger man in those days that I was coming up through the ranks, and it was just a great experience to come see that. It was fun. I made the transition to sales about 12 years ago in that process. I moved in and haven't left since.
Why the transition to sales?
I think it was naturalistic for me, given my background. I'd always been customer facing. Again, consulting. I actually started out in .com consulting back in the early 2000s and the .com bust, and I lived through that and all of that stuff. And then moving over to services. And I just really enjoyed the customer experience. Spending time with customers, trying to understand what they were trying to accomplish, what were the pain points, what their objectives. And so I enjoyed that experience. And then as we were doing a lot of acquisitions into the portfolio, I kind of raised my hand at some point and said, I'd really like to kind of go full-time into the sales, and got the bug and never left. Yeah, nice.
And this isn't your first CRO gig, is it?
No. So I was fortunate enough in IBM Security that I led all of sales. So we don't carry CRO titles in places like IBM, which is fairly common in large enterprises like that. But I did have all of the sales team, very large, as you might imagine, in a place like IBM Security. When I decided to leave, though, and move in, I did have a prior role in the managed services side, where I had spent a lot of time in IBM because we had our own X-Force managed services inside of there. That was my first CRO role. And then, of course, coming over to Anomali.
And was I hear different stories about the journey to sales leadership, and it's quite interesting. What was yours always like? Was that the route you wanted to go into sales leadership? Or?
No, and I always joke, like, I'm terrible as a mentor or as an advisor to people, just because, a lot of people try to approach their career with a very, like, I need to be here and do this job at this point in time. And I never thought in those terms. I always kind of just led by what was making me curious, what was keeping me interested, or was getting excited about things. And I always kind of reflected to people, like, my career, I probably kind of advanced faster in my career, earlier in my career, if I had stuck on one path. But because I was bouncing around and following some things that interested me, I wasn't necessarily moving up in rank all that quickly. What I found along the way was I accumulated a lot of skills, right? So if I think about the things that I did, I actually started out in finance. So I had a lot of background in finance, right? And accounting, and things like pricing. I actually worked as a pricer for a year way back in the day. Then I was in consulting. At one point I ran support. That was a whole nother story of chapter of my life. Then I went back into services, and all of that started to build up an accumulation of skills. If you think about what CROs are today, there's an aspect of CRO like anything else. It's kind of like the creep of titles. VPs become C-level. Everybody's got a C-level. There's a little bit of that. If you look at what really chief revenue officers should be doing in the right design, it's all of the revenue-facing activities. So meaning you've got customer success, right? Particularly in SaaS-based organizations. That's part of what I is that customer success is no use in selling if you don't retain the customers, right? And you want to grow off of those customers and grow with the customers and all of that. So all of that experience and that background really helped a lot when you get to that place. Because if you arrive at that place and your direct line of sales, sure, you can be successful. You're going to have to go back and learn some things that you never had. And I was just fortunate enough that I had that experience.
Yeah, awesome. And that brings you to Anomali, right? So for those that don't know, what's the problem that you guys are trying to solve or are solving?
Yeah, so for those that don't know Anomali, so we're the leading AI driven security operations platform. Really, our focus is bridging the gap between legacy attempts and visibility. And if you think about the evolution of how people have approached security operations and security analytics, it's been very, very much built in a siloed-based approach. Most people know the origin stories of things like SIEM, but then you've layered on things like SOAR, EUBA, even just basic ETL. Threat intelligence was another piece that we bring to the table. Then you had XDR and next-gen SIEM. There's a lot of pieces. And what you ended up is really challenging around getting visibility at scale. There's a lot of silos that get built. So we're a cloud native big data engine. We solve for those elements of visibility, and we consolidate all of those pieces together on one platform.
Very cool. And what makes you different then from some of the competitors in the space? What's your kind of...
well, again, I think you could definitely break up the space into kind of like legacy, first generation, next generation, and kind of the current. If you look at what are you trying to solve for? You're trying to get the visibility. Some of that visibility is because you've locked up data in different silos. Some of that is because the perimeter dissolved over the last few years. Everything's out in the cloud. The tools that you're using to do that, they're mainly focused on correlation, by pattern detections, and things like that. They're not big data engines that can really drive analytics and deal with data at scale. So that's the first problem that we solve, right? And sets us apart. So we'll regularly be able to go in and look at petabytes of data, do searches going back multiple years, and return results in under a minute. That's unprecedented.
That's
speed.
Crazy.
We did a fairly large financial services customer, and it sounds absurd, but we were 947 times faster on queries than their legacy tools.
Wow.
So it just opens up a whole nother world of what people can do around things like threat hunting, how far they can look back, right? You'd be surprised, maybe not surprised, if you spend time on how much security operations centers throttle themselves or compromise what they're doing. And it's just based on the capability of the tools and sometimes the cost. It just gets very expensive. So that's number one. The other big element is being able to bring AI into it. And of course, everybody's talking about AI. And a lot of the AI that gets put in place is really, natural language, putting OpenAI, ChatGPT on top of things, which is nice. It's a nice thing. Really what our AI is built on is to think and act in multiple personas.
Yeah.
The SOC analyst, how do they look at what they're trying to detect, what they're hunting for, and then what to do with it when they detect things.
Yeah.
But you need multiple personas inside of there. So one of the things that we're really good at is also helping the persona of the SOC manager and the executive. So one of the common examples we get is from CISOs and even CIOs saying, I need to be able to answer for the organization or even up to the board.
Yeah.
What's happening in the world? What are we at risk at? And what's our vulnerability against that? If you think about that simplistic question, and then you wonder, well, how would you actually do that? Answering that question can be very, very complex. It can take days. And unfortunately, you don't get that question with a lot of time. You're getting it from the CEO, the board. And we can solve for that, meaning our AI can go in, answer those questions very simply, and actually curate the response back at an executive level, meaning it's succinct and business language, not bits and bytes and hashes, and IOCs and IOAs and things like that.
Very cool. And I know that's linked to that. There's a few announcements or an announcement that's coming up for you guys, right? Can you talk about that to the audience?
Yeah. So if you think about that, you're like, great, I have this AI engine now, can really start to understand. It can answer from different personas, understanding what I'm trying to get to. Then it starts to open up possibilities and extend beyond security use cases.
Sure.
So we've had a lot of requests from customers say, I want to be able to customize what we're looking for and start to get beyond just security use cases. So we have something we're releasing now called Custom Copilot. And it's the ability to upload your own data into our AI platform in very simple, multiple different formats, but as simple as CSV files. Non-log data, right? So not traditional telemetry that you're pulling in. So a couple of really interesting use cases that we started to explore with customers, looking at things like fraud, data fraud, or voter fraud. We have a customer, we're doing traffic analysis in their city streets and understanding how do they optimize traffic and things like that, because customers are trying themselves to create fusion centers and go beyond. And they really need AI tools, but big data engines that can do that. So really fun stuff that we're going to come out with here.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Cool. And what's the future look like for you guys into H2? Talk from a sales point of view or a business point of view, and into next year as well. Yeah.
So I think this journey has been amazing. So adoption of our Copilot and AI, we just broke through $1 million in generated ARR in the first few weeks of releasing it.
Awesome.
Just because so many people were anxious to get at it. So really excited about that. And I put it that way because that tool is available for anybody that's been using Anomali for a number of years. The second step with customers is going in and augmenting or replacing all these tools that I kind of rattled off. And there's so many great use cases there. Like, I gave the example of threat hunting, being able to go back and look back multiple years, looking at data sets they're just not even bringing in. Because those data sets are really difficult to parse and understand and bring in, and it gets really expensive. Right? And our whole goal is, hey, look, we want to give you better security, better performance, and do it at much better economics. Right. And that gets, you got to build tools that are really leveraging all of the capabilities, cloud native, edge or computing, right? So you can do it in real time really efficiently. So we're really excited. Some of these projects that we've kicked off with customers are going to really kind of transform how they look at their entire security operations. So bringing more people in the fold is our second half.
That's very cool. And what's your take on the modern SOC?
Well, I think in large part, most people would feel it's broken. It's, it still operates in large part, very dependent on SOC analysts. It's very difficult to retain talent. It's very difficult to train them, not just on how to look for threats, analyze threats, respond to threats, but it's just all the tools they have to use, right? And all those tools most of them come with proprietary language and unique things. And like we talked about earlier, like if you have 5 different kind of main tools, that's just the main tool. Yeah, I've got my SOAR over here, my UB over here. I'm putting things into, a service desk like a service now. I've got to learn all those different aspects. It just bogs everybody down. So I think everybody is looking to break that out. And again, I think it comes down to kind of 2 or 3 core elements. Can you bring AI to start to augment all of that, make decisions, prompt people for the right path? Can you analyze the data in real time at the speed you need to? Can you get to all that data? Can your data engine scale? And then the third thing is, can I do this with stripping out all that proprietary? Right. So that's where the natural language comes in. And it's really cool to watch. We've got customers who their teams have never been able to operate in their SOC in their natural language. You know, they've got teams in India, the Middle East, Africa, all over the world. They're all operating in English, right? And now all of a sudden they're operating in their natural language because the AI and the tool is able to translate on the fly. You'd be maybe, again, not surprised how much quicker they are and how much more confident they are when they don't have to do that translation because it's their native tongue.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Fun. Yeah, that is fun. And how do you see the space playing out in the next couple of years? Is there any like predictions that you have or anything you can comment there?
Yeah, well, I think you're going to see a lot of SOC transformation. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's the right time. If you look at a lot of the SOCs today, and my experience coming from Curator and IBM, you know, a lot of what's running today are tools, processes, people, systems that were put in place 10 years ago. Yeah. They've just naturally aged out. A lot of organizations are still running on-prem. They're not keeping up. And they've added, like I said, they've stacked all these other pieces on top. And you see a lot of interest in the market to say, look, I've got to get off the back of this. Yeah. And I think Anomali is leading the way. I think there's some other players obviously out there that see the same thing. It's got to be AI-driven, big data engine. So I think you're going to see a lot of transformation here. Yeah. And it's going to come in different forms. You know, some people are going to start to piece this off and augment and peel off. Some people rip the Band-Aid right off. We did that with one very large customer who moved 15 terabytes of daily ingest off their legacy SIM, and we did it in 4 months and pulled them over to production. That's how fast it can go if you have the right construct.
Yeah, very good use case. Okay, cool. Yeah. And like to wrap things up, so as a sales leader, you've obviously had your journey to getting to a sales leader. If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring sales leaders, maybe they're in an IC or management role. One thing, it might be hard, but is there something that you look back and you'd give
I think you always got to build great talent around you. Okay. I think it's an interesting thing when you come up through the sales ranks because so much of what you do as a sales leader is based on you as an individual. How good am I at morale? Can I hit my numbers? It's a very individualistic thing. And then all of a sudden you're leading a team. And the whole nature of what makes you successful has now changed. But you built your whole career on being, you know, the guy. Right? So the thing that I always, talk to fellow leaders and people who are aspiring is you got to build a great team. Yeah. You got to have great leadership around you because you won't be able to scale. Yeah. Right. And that's what you need. So that's always my singular piece of advice.
Yeah. Right. For a sales leader, it makes sense, right? You're only as good as your team that you attract, develop, right?
Exactly.
So it's key. Yeah. Okay, cool. And if folks that want to reach out or contact Anomali, how can they do that?
Well, we're going to be here at BlackHat, obviously. If you're listening to us later on, please come to anomali.com. Yeah. Tons of ways you can see some of what we do in action. Come out there. There's multiple ways from there to engage with us and come see, but you'll see it in action there. So awesome. I think it's the easiest way.
Great to have you on, Tony.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for listening to this very special BlackHat 2024 edition of CyberBytes, the podcast. If you did enjoy the episode, please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues and friends. If you're a candidate looking for a new role or a hiring manager looking for their next technical or GTM hire, then please reach out directly or via our company email info@aspironsearch.com.